وبعد فالإنسان ليس يشرف إلا بما يحفظه ويعرف لذاك كان حامل القرآن.
الصفات التي لها ضد. We said there are 5 groups of attributes that have opposites. There is one that has an opposite. Yeah, each attribute has an opposite, except for one of the groups has 3 different opposites. And once we get to that, inshallah, I'll explain more about it, inshallah azza wa jal. So, the first 2 attributes that have, or that are opposite to each other, are al-hamsu wal-jahr. Al-hamsu wal-jahr. Which, al-hams means whisper. If you want to translate it, it means whisper, word to word. And al-jahr, they say apparent or something that's obvious. Yes, that you making obvious. The second group of opposites that we have is Shiddatu, which means the strong letters, and Tawassut, the moderate letters, yes, and Rakhawah or Rakhawah, yes, which is the loose letters. Now each one of these is the opposite to the other, but I'll explain more and make it clear, inshallah azza wa jal, once we get to it. And again, brothers and sisters, please, if there is any question, don't hesitate to ask, inshallah. And if the sisters, they want to ask, they can also ask, or they could write it, inshallah azza wa jal, on a note, and I think Brother Naeem can pick it up, inshallah. Yes? Yeah, inshallah. So, because especially with regards to Sifaat, my dear brothers and sisters, Sifaat is a topic that you must be focused when I'm talking about it, because there's a lot of detail in it. It's very easy, but it's a lot of detail that you need to revise, inshallah. And bi'idhnillah azza wa jal, hopefully once I finish as-Sifaat, we will give you the first test or exam, whatever you want to call it. What do you think? I'll give you a test or exam on as-Sifat and al-Makharij. The first group and the second we spoke about. The third one is at-Tarqiq, which is light or small mouth letters. And at-Tafkhim is the opposite to that, which is the full mouth or heavy mouth letters. You do not need to write what I'm saying, brothers, because I'm going to go through it one by one, inshallah. I'm just going through the table quick, then we'll start with the first one. The fourth group of opposites is al-isti'la'u wal-istifal. Yes, al-isti'la' means the elevation, and al-istifal is the lowering of the back of the tongue. We're going to speak about all of these bi'idhnillah azza wa jal in detail. And the fifth and final group of sifat is al-itbaqu, and the opposite to that is al-itbaqu wal-infitah, and the opening. The opening, which is al-infitah, and itbaq is the closure, inshallah, between the tongue and the roof of the mouth. We will be speaking also about that. Now you may have seen, brothers and sisters, in Tajweed books, they have added another 6th sifat, which is or a group of sifat that are opposite, which is al-ismatu wal-idhlaq, or al-dhalaqatu wal-ismat. Yes? Now this attribute is actually not an attribute. This, ya ikhwani wa akhawati, is nothing to do with Tajweed. The ulama have put it in there just for the numbers, because there are 17 makhraj. Yes? They said, okay, we'll put 17 sifat. That's the Imam Ibn al-Jazri. That's how he thought about it. They just added it. However, al-ismatu or al-dhalaqatu wal-ismat, which is not written on the board, is not an attribute of letters with regards to what? Ahkam of Tajweed. That's why I have not included it here. So if you see it in a book, don't be like, subhanallah, our teacher, he flopped us and he hid one sifa from us. Yeah, it's not the case. It's just that it's got nothing to do with Ahkam al-Tajweed, but it's what? It's to do with the Arabic grammar, to do with asma' a'jamiyya or arabiyya, with Arabic names or non-Arabic names, inshallah ta'ala, or words. We will speak. We don't need to speak about this because it's to do with grammar, but we will be speaking about the ones you have on the board. If you want to take a picture, of course, of this table, you can. Otherwise, I'm moving on, inshallah. Jayyid. If are there any questions so far? We haven't got into it, to be honest, yet, so the questions will start after this, inshallah. So the first group of opposites that we have is al-hamsu wal-jahr. Al-hamsu wal-jahr. We're going to start bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal with al-hams. Al-hams, if you want to translate it word by word, it is whisper. But we need to define it, inshallah, in a professional way, inshallah, to understand what do we do when we have this rule. So al-hams is to fully run your breath when pronouncing certain letters in Arabic. Remember, Akhwani and Akhawati, we are talking about letters, the Sifaat of letters. So anything I talk about is to do with letters. So, it is to fully run your breath when pronouncing certain letters. I think there are 10 letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Naam, 10 letters. Yes? Which are what? فَحَثَّهُ شَخْصٌ سَكَتْ. That's how you remember them. Yes, just to remember them, the Arab used to what? Put abbreviations, I think they call these, where they will remember, like a poem or a sentence that would make, or that has a meaning, and the first letter of each word is one of the letters of that rule. Or in this case, all the letters that are highlighted in yellow are all letters of hams. They are 10 letters. And you say it, فَحَثَّهُ شَخْصٌ سَكَتْ. If I say this letter and I do not run my breath, the letter will not be right. Okay? And we're going to prove it, inshallah, with examples together. Let's focus on hams. Yes? So, what do I mean by running your breath? To test the difference of one, now of course I'm applying this rule on English letters, but it's nothing to do with Tajweed. I didn't add no letters to the Arabic language. Jayyid. So, with the B, say B. And put your hand here and don't put any pressure. B. Is there any air? Sometimes there might be a shot, just a little bit of air that would come out. That's natural because you're breathing. But compare it to the next letter. Say P. So P is a letter that requires the running of breath. And if you want to apply it to English, P is a letter of hams. B is a letter of the opposite, al-Jahr. But let's forget about Jahr for now. So now let's apply it to the Arabic letters. If you say the first letter we have there, Fa, and put your hand, say Fa. Is there any air? Clearly there is air there, yes? Now all these 10 letters, the amount of air that's going to come out is not all the same. Yes, my dear brothers and sisters, the amount of air that's going to come out when you say these 10 letters is not all the same. It varies between one letter and another. Yes, so the Fa will be much more than the letter Ta. Yes, but the Ta, the air comes out differently. It's just like a shot. Yes, so let's go through them. Fa. If there's no air coming out, you have to make sure that there's air running. Yes, the breath must run continuously. Then you have Ha, Tha, Ha, and you could notice with those 4 letters, the air was not the same. Even the power that you was letting out is of course because the mouth movement and the place the letter comes from is different. That's why the amount of air would not be the same. Then you have the Sheen. Shh. Notice the last 2 letters, Kaf and Ta, there's just a shot of air. Yes? Because they are strong letters. Remember, these 10 letters, they have the exact same sifa of hams. But the way the air comes out and the amount of air that comes out is different with each letter. The reason for this is more than one reason, of course. The first one is they come from different makharij. They come from different articulation points or exits. That's number 1. Number 2 is that these letters, some of them share the same makhraj. If you don't make a difference in when you say when you let the air out, you might fall into a mistake of bringing a different letter. So what we mean by this, and another reason because of the difference of the amount of air that's coming out, is another attribute that's after this. After hams and jahr, there's another group which is called Shidda, Tawassut, and Rakhawah or Rakhawah. Yes, these 3 sifas are a reason for the amount of air that's coming out. So for example, the Kaf and Ta in those 10 letters are the least letters that air is coming out. Yeah, they are the letters that have the least air coming out. Yes, the reason for this is those 2 letters are strong letters. Hurufun shidda or ahrufun shidda. We're going to come to this. You don't need to write it. So you might ask me, I'm hoping everyone understands, of course, how the air is running. Yes? Because you're going to see the opposite now in Jahr, how there will be no air. So, these 10 letters, my dear brothers and sisters, you might ask, what's the point of learning? I naturally run my breath when I'm saying these letters. That's true, a lot of the times you do. But, obviously, depending on what is your mother tongue, these languages, and I told you accents, I think last week, accents, even as an Arabic spoken person, your accent could affect your recitation or will affect your recitation until you, inshallah, read to a professional teacher and they correct your ahkam. And also, if you even a non-Arabic speaker, your language, whether it's Urdu, Punjabi, whatever language, Somali, whatever language you speak, these languages, they affect as well your recitation. How? With the articulation point of letters. For example, let me take out of these 10 letters, the letter Kha. If we look at the letter Kha, for example, the letter Kha comes from where, brothers and sisters? That's the first test. Where does the letter Kha come from? Al-Halq. Your name is Akhi? Umar. Jazakallahu khairan, ya Umar. Umar said the Kha comes from Al-Halq. Does anyone want to be more specific, or do you want to add on which part of the Halq? Top of the throat, ya Umar. Jazakallahu khairan. So the letter Kha comes from the top of the throat. What other letter comes from the same exact place? Who knows? You should all know. أخي ذكرني اسمك. حمادة. Ghain. The letter Ghain also comes from the top of the throat. The Ghain and the Kha. So these two letters come from the same exact makhraj. But in this first sifa we learned, the hams, there's only one of those two letters, which is what? Kha. Why is the Ghain not there? The Ghain is opposite in this characteristic to the Kha. So now if you don't know these sifat and you study the makharij, you'll be like, mashallah, the Kha and Ghain come from the top of the throat. Let me read. You Kha, Ghain, you say, Khayril Maghdubi. You change the Ghain to a Kha. Why? Because you didn't focus on the sifat. You just know, okay, the Kha and Ghain, they both come from the top of the throat. So you've mistaken and you've mentioned what? The Kha instead of the Ghain. Or you could do the opposite, and it happens a lot. Inshallah, all of you will become teachers, and you will hear students and adults as well, whether they're adults or children, they both will fall sometimes into mistakes of, they will say, غَيْرِ الْمَخْضُوبِ. It happens a lot in changing the entire letter, and this is a lahnun, khafi or jali. Jali. Did we speak about the two different types of mistakes? We didn't. Not at the beginning, the first lesson. We didn't. No, we'll say it now, inshallah. In Quran, there are two different types of mistakes. And a mistake in the Arabic language or in the Quran ilm of Tajweed is called lahn, even in the Arabic language. Lahn. Yes? So lahn in the ilm of Tajweed means a mistake. Lahn. That's a lam, ha, noon. The lam with a fatha, ha with a sukoon, and noon with tanween dam. Lahnun. Yes? If you're going to continue. So the luhun, there are two types of luhun. Lahnun jali. وَلَحْنٌ خَفِي. A obvious mistake and a hidden mistake, or a major mistake and a minor mistake. I prefer to call them an obvious and a hidden. Now, an obvious mistake is haram to fall into, which is lahnun jali, such as changing a vowel or letter that could or is possible to change the meaning or give an incomplete meaning. Yes? For example, you will hear, I've heard this with my ears, a reciter reciting and saying, وَمَن يُضْلِلِ اللَّهُ فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ هَادٍ. And this is a mistake that's firstly jali. It's a major or obvious mistake because he changed the letter dad to the letter dha. And this changed the meaning completely, which is very dangerous meaning as well. وَمَن يُضْلِلِ اللَّهُ فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ هَادٍ. And whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes upon that he is going astray, nobody will guide him. But with the way the reciter or that person recited it, means what? A person that Allah shades in his shade, nobody will guide him. It does not make any sense. So that's why, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us. We are not clever people or we are not people of knowledge. It's just the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has blessed us to be in such a gathering. Firstly, that is surrounded, inshallah ta'ala, with salihin, people of Quran. We ask Allah to make us and you amongst them. And secondly, that are learning, inshallah, the tajweed for the sake of Allah azza wa jal bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Jayyid. So the letter Kha and the letter Ghain. Look at the Kha. Say Kha and put your hand here. Is your breath running or not? Yes. Say Gha. Don't say Gha. Because when you say Gha, that lets air come out. Just say Gha. Is there any air? No. You might be like, there's a minimum. Don't count that as air. Air has to be like a shot. Yeah, or a powerful amount of air that you will feel. So the Ghain and Kha share the same makhraj, but have opposite sifat when it comes to hams and jahr. Is that clear, my dear brothers and sisters? And with the Kha and Ghain, count with all the other 10 letters. Yes, you will find so many letters that share the same makhraj, but have different sifat. Such as the Ta and the Dal. The Ta is running of breath. Dal is the blockage or imprisonment of running of breath. Now we move on to the next صفة, which is the opposite to what? Al-hams, which is called al-jahr. Al-jahr is to fully imprison or block the running of breath when pronouncing the remaining Arabic letters. So al-jahr is to imprison or block, or fully imprison or block the running of breath when pronouncing the remaining Arabic letters except for the ones mentioned in hams. Is that clear? So any letter apart from those mentioned for hams, you will not run your breath on them. And if you do, you are falling into a mistake, and you should try and fix that, inshallah ta'ala. And we showed an example of the letter ghain. And we showed the letter ba, or b in English, but it's the same thing with the letter ba. Ba. Yes? Or similar. Jayyid, and the remaining, like the letter qaf. Say qa, qa, qa. Or iqa. If it's qalqala, yeah? This would be, is there any breath running? No. So this letter is what? A letter of jahr, which you fully imprison or block the running of breath when pronouncing them. There are 11 attributes that have opposites. 11 attributes that have opposites. And then we're going to speak about what the second type of sifaat, which are sifatun la ضد laha. Attributes that have no opposites. Okay? And we'll speak about those at the time, inshallah ta'ala. And so far, the letters we spoke about, or the attributes, that we spoke about, are they attributes that are lazima, sifatun lazima, or sifatun ardiyya? At the beginning we said sifatun ardiyya are attributes that are attached to letters and they never leave them no matter what condition their letter is in. And there are also sifatun ardiyya. Sifatun lazimatun lilharf are attributes that never leave the letter, are attached attributes. The other category is sifatun ardiyya, which are occasional attributes. Hams and jahr, my dear brothers and sisters, are they sifatun ardiyya or lazima? Ardiyya or lazima? Are they lazima? Jayyid. The sister said they are sifatun lazima. They are attached attributes, and this is correct. And just a note that you could write down, all attributes that have opposites are what? Sifatun lazimatun lil huruf. All the letters that we're going to, all the attributes, that we're going to talk about, which have opposites, are attributes that are attached attributes, sifatun lazima. So they will always be the letter, except the ra, lam, and alif in tafkhim and tarqiq that we will probably be speaking about next week. I don't think we'll be speaking about it today, looking at the time. So we're going to speak now about the second group of attributes that have opposites. Yes? Which are sifatun also laha ضد. There are three. This group, brothers and sisters, they are combined of three different attributes that are opposite. One is opposite to the other. I will explain more once you see it, inshallah, once we start. The first is الشدة. The second, التوسط. And the third, الرخاوة or الرخاوة. You could call it الرخاوة or الرخاوة. Okay? الشدة means strong letters. التوسط means what? Moderate letters. And the Rakhawah means loose letters. Some people call them soft. Some books write and they say soft letters. I chose the word loose because we're going to use soft and gentle in another place. In something else. It's also an attribute. We don't want to get you confused, inshallah. So it's better. I personally actually find loose a more accurate word to describe Rakhawah. And once we explain the letters, I think you will agree with me. So let's start with Shidda. Shiddatu, the definition of it is to fully block or imprison what? The sound or breath? Sound. Because this is something you have to pay attention to. And in the test, I might ask some tricky questions. The definition of Shidda is to fully block or imprison the running of the sound of the letter. Whereas with hams and jahr, it's to do with the sound or the breath? The breath. The hams and jahr are to do with the blockage or running of what? The breath. Shidda, tawassut, and rakhawah is to do with the running or imprisonment of what? Sound. This is something to pay attention to and do not get confused between the two. So, shiddatu is to fully imprison or block the running of the sound of the letter as soon as you touch its makhraj. So you will touch the makhraj, then there will be a cut or imprisonment of the running of the sound. You will not hear the sound of the letter after that. And there are 8 letters in this type or in this attribute, which we remember in this sentence, أجد قط بكت. What does this mean? Yeah, أجد قط بكت means I find a cat crying. You'll be like, subhanAllah, what's this, Tajweed or... yeah, it's Tajweed, but it's just so you could remember, inshallah ta'ala. The words. Of course, this was done for the Arabic spoken people so they could understand. But alhamdulillah, we're learning Arabic as well here. Yes? So أجد قط بكت means I find a cat crying. Every letter that's highlighted there, which are all of them, is a letter of Shidda. What's the first letter? No. I was waiting for this. Who said Alif? I was waiting for you to say Alif. A lot of the times in the Arabic language we learned and we got used to seeing a Alif, the line, with a Hamza. Straight away we like Alif. No, this is not an Alif. This is a Hamza. Whenever you see an Alif with a Hamza under it or on top of it, you call it Alif or Hamza? Hamza. You will only call it Alif if it's in the Mad condition or Jawf condition. Is that clear, my dear brothers and sisters? And all of you are professionals at that, I'm assuming now, alhamdulillah. Yes, because we spoke about it in detail in the last 2 weeks. These 8 letters, what do we mean by you fully block or imprison the running of the sound when pronouncing them? And of course this, my dear brothers and sisters, applies whether the letter is sakin or mutaharrik, whether the letter is voweled or non-voweled. However, the examples I'm going to give you now will be sakin. Why? Because it's just a bit clearer. It's clearer to use as an example, but it applies in both when the letter is sakin or mutaharrik. So if you read the ayah and you say, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فذروها تأكل في أرض الله. The word تأكل. If I recite it, how did I recite? Did I say, what I mean, this Hamza that is sakin, yeah? It's an Alif, of course, with the Hamza. What do we call it? Hamza. This Hamza is sakin. But even if it was mutaharrik, it is still a letter that is shadid, a strong letter, a letter of shidda. So when I pronounce it, or when I say it, as soon as I touch the makhraj, as soon as I touch the letter, I need to run away and make an imprisonment or blockage of the running of sound. So I will not run my sound throughout. Yeah, the sound of the letter would not run throughout the letter. So if I say, when I said it, I said, فَذَرُوهَا تَأْكُلْ تَأْكُلْ. Can you all notice the gap between the Hamza and the Kaf? Yes or no? Good. تَأْكُلْ. I'm not exaggerating. That's how it should be recited. Of course, this gap should not be too long. It has to be natural. So you cannot say, فَذَرُوهَا تَأْكُلْ فِي. You can't do this. Yeah? It will just be, you say the letter and you move to the next letter straight away without continuing to run your sound on the letter Hamza. Even if you try to run the sound of Hamza, you can't. You cannot do that. You cannot say فَذَرُوهَا that's more than one Hamza. And if you hold it, the Hamza sound is gone. جيد? So it's فَذَرُوهَا تَأْكُلْ فِي أَرْضِ اللَّهِ. Is that clear? Yes? Or ذَلِكَ وَعْدٌ غَيْرُ مَكْذُوبٍ. Look at the kaf and the dhal. Is there a gap between the kaf and the dhal? Pay attention. مكذوب. Yes? And of course the gap would differ between letters depending on how or other attributes that the letter has, which also makes an effect. The letter of Shidda, this is an example of the Hamza and the Kaf. Do you want me to give you any other example? It's clear, inshallah. I think it's clear, yeah? The Jim, يجعل. You might be saying, okay, but you're applying qalqala. Yes, I applied qalqala, but there is a gap after this qalqala until I say the next letter. This gap is called imprisoning the running of the sound until the next letter is heard. Or as soon as you touch the letter or touch the makhraj of the letter that is strong, you cut or imprison the running of the sound. Is this clear, my dear brothers and sisters? Jayd. Now we will move to the next characteristic or attribute which is opposite to Shidda. I have a question, or I'll ask the question after I explain, inshallah. Before the question, Tawassut is the second attribute which is an opposite to the first one. Yes? So, Tawassut, which is the moderate letters, the definition of it, it is to partially run and partially imprison or block the running of the sound of the letter when pronouncing it. So when you say the letter, when you touch the makhraj of the letter, your sound or the sound of the letter will run for a little bit, and then there will be a cut, a gap between it and then the next letter. Would this gap be as big as the gap as Shidda? Again, I'll define it again, then I'll ask the question. At-tawassut is to partially run and partially imprison or block the running of the sound of the letter as soon as you touch the makhraj. Yes? So when I touch the makhraj of the letter, I will run for a bit. You saw with shidda, I said the letter's makhraj and ran off. I cut it straight away. I ran away. I didn't continue on the letter. And there was a gap that was very obvious. With tawassut, I will touch the makhraj and run the sound for a bit. Yes? And then I will make a gap, then say the next letter. My question, is the gap between the tawassut letter and the next letter the same as the gap between the shidda and the next letter? Yes or no? No. Which gap is more or bigger? Shidda. You should know this straight away from the definitions, inshallah ta'ala. Yes? So the gap in shidda is bigger. In fact, in most of the letters of tawassut, you might not hear the gap unless you are very, very focused, or you're a teacher that's listening through all the time to students that are reciting to you. SubhanAllah, the more you listen to Quran, whether you're a teacher or not, the more you will, and of course you have the knowledge of Tajweed, like you yourselves now, inshallah ta'ala, that are learning, you will start to spot, you will start to achieve things and find out a lot of things that you have not, or that you haven't known before, even yourself, without learning it from a teacher. Such as these type of gaps, you'll hear it, you'll notice it. But if you was to have a recording and put it slow, slow it down, then you will hear the gap clearly. Okay? In both tawassut and shidda. Obviously, shidda, the gap will be a bit longer. Okay? So, there are 5 letters again, or there are 5 letters for a tawassut. Yes? There are 5 letters of tawassut, which are what? Lin Umar. What does Lin Umar mean? Lin means soften. Umar. Soften Umar. Why soften Umar? Soften means, layyin. Lin comes from the word lean. Yeah, soften. We're going to learn this is another attribute called lean, which is soft and gentle. That's why I didn't choose to call Rakhawah that. Anyway, Lin Umar means soften, ya Umar. Yeah, soften, O Umar. Because Umar radiallahu anhu was known for shidda. Yes, he was rajulun shadid fil haqq, of course. Therefore, they were, just to remember, they were like Lin Umar, the ulama. Jayyid. So the lam, noon, ayn, mim, and ra. These 5 letters are the letters of tawassut. So let's take an example. And you will notice that I'm giving examples of those letters when they are sakin. Not because this rule applies only when they are sakin. No, it applies when both the letter is sakin or mutaharrik. But due to the example being clearer and more noticeable when you hear it, when it is sakin. Let's look at the letter ayn. Yeah? If I say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, do you notice the ayn here? I've stayed on it for a bit. A lot of people, what do they fall into? And in the mistake, they either fall into a few or one of a few mistakes. The first one, they will either bounce on the ayn, which is very common. A lot of people say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. They did qalqala on the ayn. Is the ayn a letter of qalqala? No, it is not. Therefore, this is a mistake. Is this a lahnun jali or khafi? I forgot to continue the mistakes. Yeah? Lahnun jali was an obvious mistake, which is haram. Lahnun khafi is a hidden mistake, which is not haram, but a professional should not fall into. To avoid bouncing on this ayn, or some other people fall into not showing it at all, or making it so strong, like a letter shadid, they say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ. They cut the sound. This is khata. The ayn is not like this. The ayn, you must run the sound of ayn for a bit. How long? There is no specific time. Yeah, some people say, and there's no specific time, because it's not. These rules have nothing to do with time. It's to do with your pace. So long as you're keeping a shorter gap between the moderate letter and the next letter, then the gap between the strong letter and the next letter, then you are safe. So if the gap is bigger with shidda letter and next letter, you are safe. Okay? And then the Rakhawah, of course, we'll talk about that next. So Lin Umar, lam nun ayn mim ra. The ayn, how do you say it correctly? You run the sound of the letter for a bit. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ. You noticed the ayn? Did you notice that the ayn ran for a bit or not? Again. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Did you notice or not? The ayn, the ayn sakin, na'budu. The same thing with the ayn, by the way. Is this clear? Is it clear that I've stayed on the ayn for a bit? Now, do not exaggerate. Some people say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, and this ayn will ended up going from the bottom of the throat rather from the middle, and the ayn's makhraj is from the middle. So we need to try and avoid all of these mistakes with no exaggeration, and of course not laying back and not applying the rule. Is this clear? So the ayn must you must run a bit on the ayn when saying it. The letter ayn, you must run the sound. And is it as obvious as it is with the shidda letters? No. You see the gap I have between the ayn and ba. Is it as obvious and as clear as it was with the shidda letters? Yes or no? No. Because obviously the gap with shidda was much more. The lam, Jamil. And that's a very good question, because the letter lam, a lot of qurra fall into this mistake. They do qalqala on the lam. In Surah Al-Fatiha, I want to give examples of Surah Al-Fatiha first, yes? When they recite, they say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. How many of you have heard this? Rabbil Alameen. They say Rabbil. This lam, which is sakin. Whether it is sakin, of course, sister and brothers and sisters, or mutaharrik, a lot of people, they don't give it its time. So the lam, of course, I'm showing you when it is sakin because it's more obvious when it is sakin. If you recite and you say, Alhamdu, you bounced on the lam. You did not give it its required time. Yes, which is to partially run the sound of the letter and partially imprison it. So there must be a gap between the lam and the ha. But it should not be as big as the gap of shidda. So if I recite Alhamdu, then I've made the gap between the lam and the ha like shidda. I've made the letter lam a strong letter, which is wrong. So, he agrees with me. So, the lam must have no gap between, or there must be a very minimum gap between the lam and the ha. So I will say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Both lambs, pay attention. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Both lambs, I've given a bit of time when I pronounce them. Is this clear, my sister? Jayyid. And this is with all the other letters the same thing. Now, one of these letters, those 5 letters there, is a bit of a tricky letter. I'm not going to say hard. And it's not tricky either, actually. That's the wrong word. It's a bit of a less easy letter to pronounce. Yes, because the Quran is all easy, alhamdulillah. Which is the letter what? Guess. Ra. Of course, everyone's like, Ra, oh, this Ra is giving me a headache. The Ra is a bit of a less easy letter to pronounce when it is sakin, or to run your voice a lot, or run the sound of it. A lot of people, they say, Al-Ard. Where's the Ra? Did you hear the Ra? I'm saying the word Al-Ard. The Ra is gone. They say, Al-Ard. The Ra's gone. Some other people, they go the opposite 180 degrees and they exaggerate too much. And they say, Al-Ard. They made too much tikrar or takrir, which is also an attribute we're going to learn about. So putting all these attributes together, my dear brothers and sisters, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, you should have pure letters coming out, pure Arabic letters, better than some Arabic speaking people. That's how it should be if you understand all these sifat. So the Ra, inshallah ta'ala. So the Ra, and of course with reading to a teacher. Don't walk around and be like, I'm the best in it yet. You have to read to a teacher so that they hear and they correct you, because the definition itself would not help you. Or to help you a bit, but not fully. Jayyid. So the Ra, the way to say it is to keep your tongue on the makhraj of the Ra. So on the upper palate. So you will say, Al-Ard. Was my Ra clear? And I didn't do too much repetition. I didn't do this. And I didn't say Al-Ard. The Ra didn't cut completely. Is this clear? Yes or no? Yes. So this is the, and this you apply it to all the other 4 letters. Okay, inshallah ta'ala. The Ra is just the one that's a bit less easy. Okay, ikhwani, akhawati, jayyid. We move on to the last attribute, which is opposite to the first 2. But this attribute is 100% opposite to shidda. What do I mean by this? Or let me ask you a question. If shidda or if rakhawah is 100% opposite to shidda, what is tawassut? What's the percentage? Of course, this percentage is not in books. I'm just making it up. And it's just so you could understand it. What's the percentage of tawassut to shidda? What's the percentage? 50%. Why? You will know from the definition of rakhawah. Rakhawah, or loose letters, are letters that require to fully run the sound of the letter when pronouncing it until the next letter is heard. So there should be no gap at all between the rakhu letter and the letter that's after it. Al-Rakhawah is to fully run the sound of the letter when pronouncing it until the next letter is heard. Until the next letter is heard. Is that clear? And they are the remaining letters of Arabic. The remaining letters of Arabic are all loose letters, which are the majority of letters. There are 15 letters that are remaining. Yes, because you have 13, you have 5 and 8, 13, and you have 15 that are remaining. All the 15 remaining letters are letters of Rakhawah, which are loose letters. So do you know now why it is a full 100% opposite to Shidda? Because Shidda is to fully imprison. Rakhawah is to fully run. What's in between? Tawassut, which is partially running, partially imprisoned. That's why Tawassut is 50% opposite of what? Rakhawah. And it's also 50% opposite of Shidda. However, Rakhawah is 100% opposite of what? Shidda. Is this clear, my dear brothers and sisters? But these numbers, if you want to put them down, they will help you to understand, especially if you're going to teach. But I've never personally seen it in like a book or something. They don't teach it like this. But it's something to keep in mind, inshallah. And I'm going to give an example of, again, in Surah Al-Fatiha, which a lot of people also fall into mistakes in, is what? The last ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, you say, غَيْرِ الْمَغْ. This letter, ghayn here especially, which is sakin. A lot of people fall into these sifat, in the mistakes in these sifat on the sakin letters. Because in sakin it needs a bit more attention. Does it mean it only applies when it's sukun and not mutaharrik? No. It applies in both, whether there's a letter sakin or mutaharrik. But when it is sakin, it's more obvious. And that's where a lot of people fall into the mistakes. So this letter ghayn, a lot of people do qalqala. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. And this is wrong. And also some people, they go even faster. Or they make a bigger gap and they make it like shid, a strong letter. And the ghayn is not clear. You say, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ. Is the ghayn clear? You'll hear a lot of reciters doing this. Especially if they're reading from their nose. The nasal passage. I mentioned this, I think, last week. Yeah, where you should avoid reading from your nose unless there is ghunnah. Because a lot of the times when you're reading from your nose, a lot of letters don't show. Especially which letters? The letters of hams, which we spoke about. Why? Because this way you're letting air out of your mouth and nose at the same time. So the letters of hams will not show clearly. Moving back to Rakhawah, or to this example, غَيْرِ الْمَغْض. Look at the ghayn sakina and the letter after it. Look how there is no gap. Maghd, maghd. Look at the ghayn. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but there should be no gap. If I'm reading it normally, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ غَيْرِ الْمَغْض غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. Yes, if I was giving it tawassut, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. If I was giving it shidda, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. And this is both wrong. The first one was the right one, which is Rakhawah, where there is no gap between the ghayn and the dad, and the next letter. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. Is that clear? Yes? Same example with the ha. For example, we have ihdina. A lot of people, they don't show this ha. They say ihdina. They say ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. They made it shadid, strong letter. So it was like, was that a ha? Did he say the ha clearly? And this is a common mistake. Other people, they say, no, you know what, today I'm going to give it tawassut, not shidda. And they do qalqala. Ihdina as-sirata. And this is also wrong. Yes, because that's naturally what will happen. But rather you must fully run the sound of the ha until the next letter is heard, meaning there's no gap. Ihdi, ihdi, hdi, hdi. There's no gap. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Same thing on the scene. Must, not mustaqim or not mustaqim. Yeah, should be no gap. Must. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم وهكذا. Inshallah, count and measure with regards to this on all the other remaining letters. I think with this we finish. It's a bit late for both brothers and sisters especially. So forgive us for this late finishing, inshallah ta'ala. Usually or soon, bi'idhnillah, Isha would go back a bit, so we wouldn't have to stop the lesson, inshallah ta'ala. I've been apologizing the third week, so forgive me. It's not, yani, inshallah. Next week we will continue from the third group of opposites, which are tarqiq and tafkhim, insha al-ali al-qadir. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وبعد فالإنسان ليس يشرف إلا بما يحفظه ويعرف، لذاك كان حامل القرآن